entrepreneur or become successful at entrepreneurship using 2 case studies. We have 15 minutes per case or like 13 minutes per case. And listen carefully, it's your examination, but you won't be mugged. And so we will be back, and we will be doing this with Letitia Brown, business development consultant and director at Intelligent Capital, Kwame Edudakwa, deputy CEO at Ghana Exim Bank. He'll be joining us via phone, and Nelson Amo, CEO of InnoHub, who will be joining us via Zoom if the weather permits. And this program is proudly sponsored by Ghana Exim Bank facilitating Ghana's international trade. We will be back. Okay, so mic check. Is Nelson Amo with us? Hi, Nelson. So Nelson is not with us. Let's do another mic check. Is Nelson with us? Hi, Nelson.
Hi, Prince. I'm with you. Good evening.
Good evening, Nelson. Glad to have you on the line.
Pleasure mine.
Right. We will be having Kwame Edudakwa soon, and the rains have also delayed Letitia Brown a bit, so we will start without them. I know they're listening to us on their radio sets, and so we said we have 2 case studies on how to become successful at entrepreneurship. And here we go with the first one. I hope you're all listening. So our first case is written and contextualized by Griffins Mandanda from Zambia. Yeah, that's it. And it is titled Education Without Focus Turns Graduates into Dependents. And it is as follows. There are 2 businessmen. Mr. Banda from Chiwa tribe in Zambia, running an electronic shop in Freedom Way, Lusaka, and Mr. Patel, a Zambian Indian man running an auto spare shop in Kamwala. I think that is in Lusaka as well. Now, both men enrolled their sons in the University of Zambia for a degree program. Patel Jr. commutes daily from Kamwala, while Banda Jr. lives in a small rented bedsitter near the university. Obviously, because his dad does not want him to commute to school. He should have all the comforts and study and become somebody. So before college, Patel Jr. used to spend his days at the auto spare shop, a routine he continues to do on Saturdays when he doesn't have lectures. Now, during vacations, he takes over the management of the shop. Banda Jr. Banda on the other hand believes that a shop is not the place for his son, Banda Jr., who is in university. Now, Mr. Banda tells his wife that that's my son. He's in university. He will get a degree and a better job, so he can't work. Well, before then. So after 2 years, the 2 juniors, that is Banda Jr. and Patel Jr., graduate and go to their various homes and their separate ways. Now, Patel Jr. now takes over the running of the auto spare shop, while Banda Jr. hits the road looking for a job that matches his degree. 2 years on, and he gets a job as a bank teller, as a supermarket clerk, and a receptionist after 6 months, and earns a meager income. Now, Banda Jr. is frustrated and decides to go back to school for an MBA to improve his CV, as it were. Now, during this time, Patel Jr. has gained some management experience running the shop with a workforce of 5 employees. That is his father's shop. And while interacting with fellow businessmen to source business in China and India, he meets another Indian businessman who is trying to market some software and computer accessories from India and Taiwan. He gets a partner to establish a company and starts distributing the products. They start their operations in the backyard of the auto shop. Does it remind you of somebody? Yeah, Bill Gates. So both Patel Jr. and Banda Jr. are now 28. Patel Jr. is now confident and has some experience making business deals. He approaches a few companies and convinces them to carry his products. He eventually passes on the running of the auto spare part shop to his siblings and is now running a full-fledged IT company. Banda Jr., who has by now graduated with an MBA, is driving a lovely car. But that car he got through a loan, and he is still in search of a better job. He secures a job at Patel Jr.'s company as a supervisor. How interesting. And this is where the real entrepreneurship class begins. And a foothold or support is all our youth require. Don't wonder why our degree holders are looking for internships and applying for jobs they see, while sons of entrepreneurs who have been made to appreciate entrepreneurship are hardly out of work. Now, education without a focus only turns graduates into dependents. Let's mentor and encourage our children accordingly. So that's the end of the first story, and that's what our writer, that is Griffin's Mandanda, advises. So now over to you, Nelson Amo. What do you make of this story?
Well, good evening, Prince, and good evening to our listeners. I think a number of things come up, and one of them is the fact that when it comes to entrepreneurship and building a business, there is a huge place for experience that we sometimes just overlook or we ignore. But again, to put the story in perspective to the discussion, not everybody would have opportunities. Like my dad runs a business, so I could get in. But I remember I'm schooling in UK, and even if you travel to US, you realize that you walk into any restaurant, and most of the times the people who you call your typical waiters are young people who are mostly in high school on vacation, or they go to school, then university, and then after school, they come and do some of these things. So you begin to build some work ethics, you begin to understand what it takes to work in any place very early in life. And typically when people like that begin to start dreaming of a business, they also have some enabling environments that would be supporting them to be able to pursue some of these things. So if you don't have that kind of experience, and now you talk to a lot of young people who are looking for jobs, the next thing is to get an MBA because they're not getting a job and thinking that will make their lives better. There are others who also try entrepreneurship for a while until somebody offers them a job and then they want to go back. So critically, we need to begin to understand and ask the hard questions on what is the value of business education, what is the value of education, and how do we begin to really create problem solvers even in school, such that even if I don't have a father who can give me a job in the place, I come up with a critical mindset where I'm out to solve problems, I'm solving challenges, and therefore when I go to my next phase, either in a job or trying to start a business, and I have to really solve problems, I have developed that innovative thinking, contrary to a lot of cases where people really have to reproduce what they're given in school, and that is the best way to show you a smart person, if you're able to really reproduce word for word, dot for dot, and that way you're on top of the class. We really have to be looking at problem-solving mindsets, creating challenges for young people to solve, and as they do that, and also asking questions. One of the key things you would hear where I had a chance to school in the UK really is about asking the right questions. When we become interrogative enough and begin to ask questions of society, that becomes the real beginning of really thinking about challenges and how you can solve them. But so in this particular case, you may not always have people with similar exposures, similar experiences, but there is this whole quarter that we would need to be able to look at. How do we get people exposed to the world of work quite early? Typically, these businessmen would have their kids joining them to the place. But in olden days, people who had farms also had their children joining them to the farms. Now you will call it, what do you call it now? Underage. There's a term for that. Underage farming or something.
Child labor, they call it.
Child labor. Thank you for that. So if that is all you have and it's not a friendly environment, what else can you create? What can you do to give these kids exposure to the right things so they begin to develop the value of work ethics, how to really work with other people very early in life, and have the right conversations early in life as well before they are thrown in a place of trying to start a business where you need
All
to know
right.
some
So
of
you're saying that, look, those of us without parents in entrepreneurship should have this sort of help in school, in university, where we're given the practical, a more practical approach to entrepreneurship through cases and encouraging university students to ask questions. Now, Kwame Edudako, you're still online, aren't you? Okay, so what do you make of this story, the first case, before we come to Letitia Brown, who's just arrived in the studio, who was listening to the case in her car, actually. So let's hear you. What do you make of the first case?
Okay, good evening to your listeners. I mean, the first case is a brilliant case. What you're really telling us is that, you know what, education must have a focus, and once you come out of education, you should be able to find a job. It's really about employment and a contribution to society, really. I think the case that you put out there, there's no right and there's no wrong, really, because yes, it's important for Mr. Patel's son to have that day-to-day feel of the employment market already, or have been in a working in a business environment where his father has been an entrepreneur and the business is growing, and today their business is fantastic, doing well. But at the same time, what universities, and this should go for our universities here in Ghana, what universities are doing is that they're trying to make sure, and that's why an MBA is important, they're trying to make sure that your degree, you have enough work experience, your degree is filtered towards direct employment. So you have your internships, you have your courses whereby, I mean, when you go to business school today, you're not just in theory. Most of the time, you have a case study, just like we're talking about right here, and you're trying to solve real-world problems. And what an MBA also does for you is that you have a huge network, because there are people who have an MBA from, you have your sort of your alumnus. You have a huge network. So I think if we're talking specifically about an MBA, I think getting an MBA from one of the Ivy League school, or sort of how our universities are becoming more and more professionally tuned, is a good thing. And also, if you are able to work as an entrepreneur, or your father's shop or your father's company, and learn to trade, that is also a good thing. I'll end here.
Okay.
I'll end just say one last thing. In investment banking, for example, some of the people that we used to employ, when I look at some of the CVs, if somebody has worked at McDonald's or KFC, for example, I'm really interested in that person, because when you work at McDonald's or KFC, it's such a complex environment, it's so demanding. You have to be part of the system, deliver at this point, so that when somebody drives through it and comes out in 5 minutes, their food is ready. So all those small experiences are important. And if you are a young person who has a parent who has a small corner shop, please don't hesitate to learn the trade from them.
All right. So I think you worked in McDonald's before you went into investment banking. And when you said that, I had some sort of movement at the back of my eye, which I saw Letitia Brown actually express with her eyes. An eye-rolling moment. So what's your take on that, Letitia Brown?
My take on what, sorry?
The story. The first case.
The case study. I mean, I think that, well, in my opinion, I don't think everybody's necessarily cut out for academia. I don't think everyone's necessarily cut out for entrepreneurship. So I think it's really about parents doing a better job of helping their young ones, to identify where their strengths lie. I think that's really what it all boils down to. You could have people that would absolutely excel in entrepreneurship without an ounce of education. And then there are others that take the corporate route and get a couple of years business experience on somebody else's dime, working for somebody else, and then go into entrepreneurship and excel because they've learnt that way. So I think it's really individual, to be honest.
So,
I don't necessarily feel that there's one prescribed way.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that Banda could have actually excelled because, with all the experience, but it was like he didn't have any wish whatsoever to go into entrepreneurship, but he had gone through the mill enough to be able to understand some basic principles of entrepreneurship. Okay, so we're going to go to the second case because we don't have much time, and I'm going to read it now. It is written by Aitken Tank, who's an entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Jot Form. It goes like this. Now, that's his experience or her experience, because I don't know if Aitken is a man or a woman. Now, it reads, after graduating from college, I'd wake up at 6 in the morning with one thing in my mind. Should I go all in and focus exclusively on entrepreneurship? Consequences be damned? Or do I look for a full-time job that gave me a sense of stability and allowed me to pay my rent? Let me rewind a bit. Back in 1999, while still studying computer science, I came up with my very first software product idea, a free open source membership program for a student website. Needless to say, I was beyond thrilled when this turned out to be an unexpected success. After graduating, after receiving positive feedback from users, I decided to release a paid version that soon became lucrative. And just like that, I was an entrepreneur in the making, and friends insisted I follow my dream after graduating and jump in with both feet, a tempting choice for a 20-something-year-old. But after all the back and forth, I ended up deciding against the most seductive choice and listened to my gut instead. This is not the story you were probably expecting. In the tech industry, you've likely read about fearless dreamers who launched their startups like Bill Gates against all odds. Those who opted for building businesses from scratch rather than pursuing the security of a 9-to-5 job. I get the allure of those stories. Overnight success is not impossible. But this narrative can be misleading when it comes to makes people believe they should start a business before they're ready. I am fairly risk averse. That's what Aitken is saying. I'm fairly risk averse, meaning I think moderation is king when it comes to most things. So what did I end up doing all those years ago? It's not as exciting as all those founders who went straight to the top of TechCrunch after graduating. I found a full-time job as a programmer for a New York company. But then, here's the thing. I didn't give up on my dream. Instead, I used my day job to fuel my passion and learned valuable lessons about business and managing teams in the process. 5 years later, I felt more prepared and confident to quit my job and start my own company, Jotform. Of course, during that time, I had the privilege of finding a job in the first place because of a current crisis, that's the coronavirus, many of us are re-examining different aspects of our lives. You may be questioning whether you should turn your skills into a business, or maybe you are one of those who have lost their jobs due to the coronavirus recession and were forced to make this decision. While new opportunities are always exciting, whatever your situation, more than anything, I'd like to advocate. Please follow a grounded approach. What is a grounded approach? We only have 9 minutes to go. Let's come to you, Letitia. You're on the studio. We'll go to Nelson and then we'll go to Kwame. What is a grounded approach before entrepreneurship?
Well, I'm a big believer in gaining some level of experience before trying to run your own business. I think if you have the opportunity to either understudy someone or get a normal kind of corporate job, I think that can be really helpful, especially in this part of the world where the education system may be lacking in some key areas around critical thinking and the practical aspects of business. You don't get much exposure to that. So I think a grounded approach is really kind of understanding what business looks like in real life before you try it out.
A grounded approach is understanding what real business is like in real life before trying it out.
Yes.
Nelson, are you there? Hello, Nelson. Okay, so let's go straight to Kwame Edudakwa, see what he thinks about this case study, and then we'll go to Nelson when he's back online. Kwame.
Right. Yes. So this one is quite a good one, in the sense that it's important by being grounded, it's making sure that you have the means to live a normal life, so that you can be successful. Now it depends how rich you are. I always take myself as an example in this case. I will take myself as an example in this case. When I finished non-business school, I realized that most of my classmates were going to become traders and fund managers and whatnot. And so I took the risk rather than go and work for a bank. I took the risk and go into the market and set up a business and get my classmates as my clients. So it's being grounded really is making sure that, if you are a mature student, for example, you don't say, I'll quit my job and not being able to pay for your or sort of help your family to live, and make sure that you take a job. But if you can afford and you have some savings on the side, don't hesitate to take a risk. But it's a bit like professional football, entrepreneurship. They'll get through, didn't finish the education and had a brilliant idea and went to set up Microsoft, and now they are incredible. And you've got your, what's his name, the inventor of Apple, who did the same thing. And there are those who have to sort of work through it and little by little and move up, and so there's no right way. You have to look at yourself and see your own personal situation, and then you make that decision. The Minister of Education, Napo, when he was Minister of Education, he was focusing on TVET, technical, vocational, and agricultural and training. We have that in Ghana. This government has been focusing on it. You can be a young student and be in the vocational aspect of your education, choose the vocational aspect of your education, and at the same time be able to have a job and educate yourself and move up from there. So I think it's a difficult one, but the most important thing to know is that being grounded is knowing your circumstances and making sure that you're not suffering while you're trying to make entrepreneurship or that's what I consider that.
Right. So there is another thing now. It says, the writer says that overnight success is not impossible, but this narrative can be misleading. When it makes people believe they should start a business before they're ready. Does that mean that if you start a business without being ready, Nelson, it's not sustainable?
Okay, so I would start by saying follow your path. There are times you really try to emulate what everybody else is doing. All your friends are starting a business, so you want to. First of all, there are cases where you don't have a very good, sound social net or safety net. So when you fall very flat. You might have others who have quite some huge support behind them. So even if they fail, they just give another check to try again. So if you don't understand your race and you try to be like what everybody else is doing, you might actually get it so wrong. So like others said, there is no right or wrong answer in this particular case. What is your path? How prepared are you? There are times when for some, it may be just a burning desire within them and nothing else will satisfy them until they go out there and venture into this. Such people would typically succeed. Even if they fail, that fire within them would bring them back again. For others who just wanted to try because it looked nice, one failure and they are down, they just don't want to do it again. So you need to really follow your passion, follow your path, know are you ready or not. Again, like Letitia said, not everybody is an entrepreneur. It's quite a painful journey. If you're not cut for it, if you're not ready for that, you need to understand that there are others who are making it so well in corporate world as professionals, as consultants, as staff who can rise to the C-suite and just make change happen where they are.
So finally to you, Letitia. They're talking about gut feelings. They followed their gut feeling. That's when they were ready. They just went. Look, and so here we have feeling as against logic. Have we learned enough to be able to go into it and be successful at that? Or are we just following our gut feeling because we need that courage to help us power through it? What is it? Gut feeling or the logic of having learned enough to be able to start your own successful enterprise?
I think both are honed with experience, in my view, right? Both your gut and then the logical part of your brain as well needs to be developed with experience. And unfortunately, I think because of the way that we live here, the social construct, maybe the proper word to use, is such that it really shields young people from having to make any kind of serious decisions until very much later in life. So they're quite often unprepared to either really understand what their gut is telling them or understand the logical approach to take in any particular situation. So I would actually say in this instance, maybe you need to try and sit down with a mentor, somebody that has far more experience than you, life experience as well as business experience, to be able to help you to figure out what your gut and what your mind may be or logic may be telling you about either particular direction.
So this reminds me of something that James Baldwin, that is an American author from, I believe, the 60s, 70s, and who died, I believe, in the 80s, said in one of his lectures in Cambridge. He said, there is no violence than that of a child discovering the world for what it is. And so if we are not teaching our children and our students in class how to be bold, how to talk back, and how to ask difficult questions just because we are afraid they will disrespect us, then we're not doing them any good.
You just hit the nail on the head, yes.
Thank you very much. So on this note, thank you very much. This has been short. I guess it's because you are not here in the studio with us, Nelson Amo, and you're not here in the studio with us, Kwame Idako. But it's been lovely having you here with your lovely face and your lovely warm presence, Letitia Brown. And thank you for joining us in the studio. This is to the two of you, Nelson Amo and Kwame Idako. It's been lovely having you here with us, talking about these wonderful case studies about how to enter, how 3 people entered entrepreneurship, actually 2 and 1 didn't. And so this has been proudly brought to you by Ghana Exim Bank facilitating Ghana's international trade. We have been talking to Letitia Brown, Business Development Consultant and Director at Intelligent Capital, Kwame Edudakwa, Deputy CEO at Ghana Exim Bank, and Nelson Amo, CEO of InnoHub. My name is Prince Moses. It's been lovely coming your way. We'll see you again later. Bye.
Transforming our country through trade is how most successful nations build their economy. At Exim Bank, we believe strongly that the bedrock of every economy lies in its ability to expand